Greetings! In today's video, we are doing ornithopter things. So, the two variations of ornithopter I want to show you are the flappy flappy bird style and the other flappy flappy, which is not a bird. So, if you look at the bottom here, it is actually pretty simplistic. There are two gates, both of them have a space input. They have opposite outputs, so the green gate has a positive output, the red gate has a negative output, and they both have the same duration, the same pause, 0.2 in this case, but it can be literally anything. And the delay on one of them is also the same number, but only on one of them. They interact with these hinges, which means that if I press the button, the hinges flap up and down, right? It is pretty straightforward, I feel. They just flap. Then on the sides of the wings, as you can see, there are two colors of hinges here. Ignore everything else, because everything else is extras that you don't really need. So the two hinges that attach the wings to the body are the same as these two green hinges. The two blue hinges are almost entirely purely aesthetic. So they make the wing have a more organic look while it's flapping because they flex in that direction, but they don't help you at all. If you want it to look better, those help a lot. If you want it to fly better, you're probably not wanting them at all. Instead, the brown hinge is useful for forward momentum, because what that brown hinge will do is on the upswing, it will fold that wing piece, the very extremity of the wing, downward, which means that it pushes air back, and then the downswing, it will fold it upward, which means it still pushes air back, which helps it basically move forward a whole bunch. Then, I mean, if we're talking about this specific ornithopter, I have committed war crimes. I have hinge glitched. Like, this is the steering hinge that's connected to this wing, and it goes 90 degrees backward so that the wing folds up perfectly into the other wing. I don't know how well you can see that. But that's just me committing war crimes. You guys shouldn't worry about that too much. Also, another thing to mention about these bird-like or bat-like or dragon-like ornithopters, bigger wings equals better ornithopter. If you make an ornithopter that's this big, it will fly a lot easier and a lot better than that tiny thing. It does fly, that tiny thing does, but this one will fly better. Also, just for reference, on like similar to this ornithopter, there's blue hinges that are the aesthetic ones that make it look nice when it's flapping, and they really don't help at all when, like, they are detrimental to your performance, but I have them for aesthetic reasons. And then there's the brown hinges that actually push you forward, and those are not, I wouldn't say necessary, but they really help if you can dial them in to the correct strength settings and stuff. Yes. The other thing to note is on the big ornithopter, I chose to use rotating servos. The reason I chose to use rotating servos is that they have a higher speed. Like, a rotating servo at max speed will move a lot faster than a regular hinge at max speed. I say regular because if you look over here, I have two hinges on the left side. One is orange and one is yellow. One of them, specifically the yellow one, is set to hold position, which means that it makes it really hard to work with. But if I press E and Q, as you can see, one of them is a lot faster than the other, right? So if you set your hinges to hold position, they will move a lot faster than regular, but they will be harder to work with because you can't like reset them to neutral, which is why the wings on my ornithopter are always facing upward unless I'm flapping them, because that way they're out of the way of the ground. So that's a really interesting thing to note about hinges. If you set them to hold position, they will move very fast. They will be also harder to deal with, but you will be able to implement logic systems in order to get that right. So all of the white hinges on this one are as well set to hold position. This does not obviously fly like a flappy bird or like a dragon. It flies like this. It is, you know, inspired from Dune, the movie, with the ornithopters that look like dragonflies. It's got similar logic, very similar logic. I would almost say that it's identical, except, as you can see, hinges set to hold position means not straight out every time you stop holding the button. It's literally random, as in you would have to calculate exactly how long you held the button down to understand which position they will end up in. And of course, you know, there's latency between you and the game and everything. In this ornithopter, I have 1 and 3 that just push the wings backward and forward, so I can manually reset them to their straight out position, so that when I fold them in, they're straight out rather than at, you know, weird angles and hitting the tail end stuff, which I do not want. The reason this one is manual is because I literally have no space. The entire thing is made out of logic blocks and I don't have extra space for more logic. Instead, I devised a system that can do the resetting for me. Now, before we jump the gun to that, we have regular flapping, which as you can see is the red and green logic gate, and then the orange and other green logic gates flap a little bit softer, which is, you know, a hover mode. The way you do that is, of course, you have high speed, angle at whatever you want, set to hold position. On these two gates, the timings are 0.05 right here, and the outputs are obviously 1 and -1. With one of them having a delay of 0 and one of them having a delay that's equal to the other ones. And very similarly to the other ones, I just have a decreased duration, 0.01, on a different button. The output is 1 with a delay of 0.01 here, and delay of 0 here with an output of -1. And that means that I have big flap and small flap, and big flap and small flap. And as you can see, it really is completely irregular whether you end up in straight out positions or not. For that, I have the gates that are purple. My number 2, it toggles on, it activates these 3 logic gates in sequence, and then it activates this, right? Because this has a 0.15 delay. 0.15 delay to all the servos and the 4 hinges at the back that fold everything backward, because it's trying to give these 3 gates time to activate the wings, which happens in this sequence, which is duration 0.2, push it back for 1 duration, push it back again for another duration, and then push it forward. So that way, whatever position they may end up in, so like this, they should be reset to their factory standard. Whatever may happen, whether they're straight out or in other weird configurations, they will be reset to straight out and then fold. Because essentially what the pink gates, they look like they're white, but I promise they're pink. What they do is back, forward. So if you're all the way forward, back, forward will put you all the way back and then into the center. And if you're all the way backward, it will just, you know, keep you at the back and then put you to the center. And if you're in the middle, it will put you at the back and then to the center again. This should always reset you to the wings being straight out, which means that you can fold them without having them collide with anything. And yeah. There you go. Ornithopters I really like them. Can you tell? As a tiny aside, I don't just encourage people to build straight up ornithopters. Like, fill them with thrusters. You can see what this is. It has a piston glitched double row of thrusters into each other. And, you know, it has a ton of gyro assistance. It has a ton of drag glitch to make it go really fast. If this is what you want to do, you can do this as well. If you want a purely ornithopter design, you know, you can go for one of these. And also, another thing I've built is this thing, which is a complete walker, and it flies without the ornithopter assistance. Like, it'll just take off, right? But I added in the ability for it to do some flapping animation. The flapping animation doesn't help its flight at all, because if I turn it off, I can fly perfectly regularly, but it's like, it's an aesthetic that you can just use on your builds if you want to make something look really organic and like it's working, right? Another thing I really like on this build is that every once in a while, it will shake its wings like a regular bug does. Bugs that have wings like this will have to shake them for maintenance and just to keep them active and clean. So, yeah. And there you go. This has been a short showcase of the logic that I use for ornithopters. They're all down there, and I really like them, and I encourage you to make them, and they're very fun. And you can do a whole bunch of cool stuff. Do cool stuff. Do it. Do it now. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the future.